Hey up there, it's me, your crotch. My living conditions down here are deplorable. The itch and burn are too much. Scrub me with medicated Fungi Cure Wash when you shower and say hasta la vista to jock itch. Get Fungi Cure Wash at Walmart and Rite Aid. Do it now!
Blog Talk Radio.
Good morning, folks. I'm finally on the air. It's 11 o'clock in the morning, 9 a.m. Central Time for Miss Georgia, and I'm so excited. We're hosting Georgia Durante today, and I have about 1.5 million questions for her. I feel like I've waited a lifetime to finally talk to this person. So without further ado, since she's been gracious enough to hold on for me, I'm going to connect her, and we can start our interview ASAP. Good morning, Georgia.
Hey, how are you?
I'm doing fine. I'm actually quite scared to death of you. Now that I know all these things about you, and I'm totally intimidated. I'm like, oh my God, that's Georgia Durante. Oh my gosh! And I thought I was excited when I did Deanna, and I was. When I interviewed Deanna Martin, that was like an experience of a lifetime. And I know that you know her. Oh my gosh! Talk about amazing. I mean, it was an amazing interview. I absolutely loved it. She's amazing. I like her.
She is.
She's pretty too. She's adorable. Oh my gosh, she's just oh gosh. So
her brother just passed away, Ricky.
I know. Yes, I had just sent a note actually to her publicist, and I said, please make sure that you go ahead and pass this on to her because she's such a delightful, very blunt, very real woman, very similar to herself. I would guess. Yeah, and she's very honest, and she doesn't sugarcoat things, and she's very blunt about. I love this person, but let me tell you the reality of this. And I like that very much, and I suspect that Georgia Durante is very much the same way. But we're going to find out because I know a lot about you now. A lot. So let's start. I'm going to kind of jump around all over the place because there's a lot to talk about. I kind of wanted to let everybody know to start with because I know what you look like now, and I've seen just tons and tons of pictures of you from the past. So tell everybody about the Kodak girl part of your life because I'm only 47, so I'm old but not necessarily older to remember the Kodak years, etc. So maybe take us back a little bit to all that era and talk about how you got involved with that.
Well, I'm from Rochester, New York, which was the home of Kodak, and I started modeling when I was 12. By the time I was 18, I was the Kodak girl, which was the Lifetime poster that was in all the drugstores and camera stores all over the world.
Yes.
It was a blue and white bikini. It's amazing how many people do remember that. I have a funny story about that.
Okay.
When my book first came out, we launched it in Rochester. And this girl comes up, and she's about 20 years old, and she says, oh, the photographer who took that picture had brought it to the signing, and he stood it up behind me. And she sees the picture, and she says, oh, I remember that. And I said, honey, you weren't even born when we took that picture. Oh, but I remember it. She said, my brother had an antique store, and he had one in there.
Oh, my God, really? Goodness gracious. Well, and I thought to myself, when I looked at that picture, the thing that amazed me was, okay, here you are, and you're that young, and you're that infamous, so to speak, right off the bat. How does a young girl handle something like that? I mean, really, how did you deal with that?
With the Kodak girl?
Yeah, I mean that's a big image. That's a big deal for somebody at such a young age. You know
what? I think when you do that from the time you're 12, just like I have a little girl that I adopted, and she has been doing plays and commercials since she was 3. And when you do that, it's just second nature. It's not a big deal. It's just what your life is about.
Okay, so you kind of shift right into that because most people, that aren't in entertainment-based or don't live their life as a model, etc. To them, it's kind of like, wow, that must be an amazing sort of lifestyle to lead where you're having your photo taken and recognized all over the place. And probably still to this day, I bet people walk up to you and they're like, that's the Kodak girl, I know her.
You know what? when the poster came out, I was 9 months pregnant.
Oh my God! Are you serious?
Like a year ahead of time, and I would see it in a store, and I'd stand next to it, and I'd say, "This is me," and they'd look at me like, "Yeah, sure, okay."
That is too funny. Oh my gosh! Look at that. That's neat though. That's a very I think it's a very cute, very interesting part of your life, and kind of sets the foreground from some of the places that you go to. So I want to talk about. Obviously, you've done both stunt work and you've done television. So I want to talk a little bit about TV. I have talked to other people who have participated in I Married a Mobster before. Was that a good experience for you?
That TV show?
Mm-hmm. The I Married a Mobster, according to the IMDb, I know that you've done Roseanne before as yourself, and of course America's Most Wanted and I Married a Mobster. And I've talked to other people who have done that show, and I get mixed reviews on it. So I'm just curious to get your take of what your experience was like while you participated on that show.
Well, I think they told the story well. I just didn't like the girl that they chose to play me.
If your people really want to know, I just didn't care for her. Really? Was she not? Did she not resemble you?
No, not at all. And the driving stuff. I mean, they could have hired me to double me. You know what I mean?
No, I know exactly what you're talking about. I shouldn't laugh. It's not funny. But no, I mean, you're the best judge of you, obviously, and such. And sometimes those TV shows, you know, you go on as yourself, and you never know what kind of experience it's going to be, you know. So I just found that kind of interesting. And I'm like, oh, she got to play herself, which is kind of cool. When people meet you and they know your past, do they expect you to be kind of rough around the edges and real tough and real guarded? Is that what they expect, or are they pleasantly surprised to see you're very different?
I think so. I'm sure. I mean, people meet me without knowing my background, first of all, and then when they find out about it, then it's like they just can't wrap their head around it. You know?
Sure. Sure.
I'm so totally different today. Well, I guess I was the same then, but into more things, you know.
No, I know exactly what you mean. Yeah, because I'm not going to lie to you folks while talking to her now, and I'll be the first to admit it. My head kind of spun when I read your website, and I read a number of different articles. It's a lot to take in. I mean, it's literally your life is just an avalanche and a roller coaster and a race car, and I mean, it's just like a little bit of everything, which we're going to talk about. One of the things that I want to bring up is that you have graced the covers of places such as American Woman Motorsports, People Magazine, of course. I liked your e-magazine on your website because you've got all these different articles about yourself. And your reference is the Real She-Pranos, which I thought was so cool. I'm like, she's part of the Real Sopranos. Do you view yourself as somebody like that? Would you find yourself qualified based on your life experience to say, yeah, I totally get that whole lifestyle, if you will, because it's such a glamorized lifestyle in today's society?
Now the question is, what?
The question is, do you consider yourself a well-versed person? Like, there's a lot of younger kids out there that are like, I want to live the gangster lifestyle. I want to get into something like that. People get away with everything. It's so glamorous. It's so exciting. If you could talk to your younger self right now, what would you tell her?
Run.
That's honest, isn't it? Don't date him. Don't go here. Don't do this. Don't do that.
You know what? I wouldn't take back anything, really. I think I learned a lot about people through, you know, that whole time in my life, and it's really helped me to, in today's world, to figure out who people are and who's going to try to hurt you down the road, and you just know it, you know, in advance.
Sure.
You learn a lot.
Sure.
But I had no idea. You know, when I came to Hollywood and I started, you know, driving for movies and commercials, nobody knew about my past, and I was doing a Bugle Boy jeans commercial, and I had to do a 180 on a narrow mountain road in a vintage Dino Ferrari.
Oh my God!
The back tire caught the soft shoulder and flipped the car over the embankment, and I was somersawing to, who's calling me, hang on, to a 300-foot drop-off into the ocean. And all I thought about was, oh my God, I'm wrecking a $250,000 car.
Oh my God.
You know, instead of thinking about my life and my kids and all those things that they pass before you, that didn't happen. All I thought about was the car. And it stopped 40 feet short of going over the cliff. And I was okay. I mean, they were taking me to the hospital, and I'm laying in the ambulance, and I'm thinking, why was the car so important? Why wasn't my life important? And when I got back from location, I went to see a therapist, and the therapist suggested that I get a journal, and I write in it for 20 minutes a day, whatever came into my head. And I started doing that, and all this stuff started coming out, and I'd never analyzed my life before. And it was coming out on the pages. And then I started adding dialogue, and I noticed this other person was speaking, and I named that person Georgia Black. So there was Georgia Black and Georgia White, and and then it turned into a book. But then with the first publisher who saw it, bought it within 23 hours. And I said, oh my God. Then I got scared. I said, oh, when people find out about what I did in my past, I'll never work again. But it really turned out to be something so different. I wasn't writing it as a therapy book for anybody, but women who were in abusive situations were emailing me and telling me that I had changed their lives. I gave them the inspiration to take that step to get out of their relationships, and it even saved 2 people, one from being killed and one from killing herself. Yeah.
Oh my God, that's amazing.
I said this was God's reason for me to write this book, So whether anybody looked down on me for my life story didn't matter, because this was the purpose. But as it turned out, I worked more than ever. I was like, people were impressed with that background or whatever, But young people read it, and they take the right steps in life. It diverts them from taking those wrong roads.
Oh, definitely. I gotcha. Okay, well, we're going to start off, obviously, to those of you that haven't read the book before, we're going to give you somewhat of a background about your life. I know that you're an Italian Catholic, obviously, and you mentioned you were originally from Rochester, New York, and I've been in Rochester, New York, actually, and that's ironic because I feel like no one's ever heard of it. I came and I donated to your homeless shelter. You have a homeless, and I'm sure there's more than one there, but there's a homeless shelter that I actually interviewed the founder of it, and I came and I brought like 20 bags of stuff. And she's like, I'm in Rochester. And I'm like, where's Rochester? Here's the thing, you're like 8 hours away from New York City. I'm like, oh my God, that's a haul. You're like in the middle of the sticks, aren't you? I mean, that's like tiny community, isn't it?
It's close to the Canadian border. It's like 90 miles from Buffalo, 60 miles from Buffalo.
That's what I thought, because I was like, oh, my God, this is so not what I expected, because I'm thinking New York. So I'm like, not every New York is New York, New York. You know what I mean? It's kind of like it was a little different experience, to say the least. So I've noticed through your life that obviously everything major seems to have happened to you when you were at a younger age. Obviously, you got married when you were at a younger age, got pregnant when you were at a younger age. So I want to talk a little bit, because I don't know a whole lot about this, but we're going to talk about your husband, because there's been a few of them, actually. George has been having an interesting – got a few husbands there. Tom was your high school sweetheart. I know you married him first. What made you get married at such a young age? I was curious about that. I know he was your high school sweetheart, but I didn't know if you had been pregnant at that time or what precipitated your relationship with him.
Actually, I was raped when I was 17, and I was a virgin at the time. And back in that day, if you weren't a virgin, people looked down on you. And I really felt I had no self-esteem. And I felt no one would want me, and I really was not in love with my husband. I was going to break up with him, but I figured, who would want me, and that was a big mistake. And I got pregnant on my honeymoon, and then I was kind of stuck, Right. But that lasted 2 years, and I left him, and that night I went into this bar. It was called Caesar's 2. It was a nightclub in Rochester. And the godfather of upstate New York was there. And so I sat down at his table, and this guy comes over, and he straddles a chair, and he's listening to our conversation. I could feel him there. I hadn't looked up at him, but I just knew he was there. And finally, when I finished speaking with Sammy, I looked up at him, and he looked at me, and he says, I'm going to marry you. And I looked at Sammy and I said, who is this nut, Well, I ended up marrying him.
Shocker. What a surprise there, isn't it? Yeah. Now, that would be Joe, right, that we're talking about?
Yeah. Uh-huh.
Okay. Now, I know that you referred to him as the Prince of Darkness, and obviously I've read enough and heard enough to understand why that is. What gravitated you to, and I mean, did you know enough about him to know what you were marrying into, what the lifestyle was going to be like, et cetera, or were you kind of like blindsided or naive into walking into the situation?
The whole time we dated, he was just Prince Charming. Prince Charming. And and it was exciting. We would go to New York and listen to these bands to bring back to
Sure.
play at our club. And it was all first class limousines. It was very exciting. I was like a young girl. That was very exciting to me. And everything was great. And when we got married, the day we got married, I became his prisoner. And I wasn't allowed to go into the club. I wasn't allowed to work out of town. I wasn't, I just became, a total prisoner. And
Sure.
then when I tried to get away from him, he put a gun to my head with one bullet in it, pulled the trigger twice. And then one time he hung me out of a 2-story building by my ankles until I was begging him to let me stay. And at the time, Patty Hearst was in the news, and you would see her, in the bank with the guns and all that. And then I realized it's the Stockholm syndrome. You fall in love with your captor because they're allowing you to live. And nobody understands that unless they're in that situation.
Sure. Sure. Oh no.
And I knew to get away from him, I would really have to go into hiding. And eventually I did that. It took 7 years, but I did that. And that's when I came to California, and I had my 7-year-old daughter. I had no money. I couldn't tell anybody where I was.
Sure.
I had actually $7 in my pocket, and I would steal food in convenience stores for her. We lived in the car, and I finally found a friend that I used to model with in New York, and he had a little studio apartment in Brentwood, and he let us stay in his place until I could figure out, what we were going to do.
Sure.
And I couldn't model, which is all I had done, and except I was driving the getaway cars for the mob back then too. But when I got to New York or got to California, I just had no idea what I could do, but I had to make some money, right? So my friend who was an actor, he knew where they were shooting car commercials. So he would tell me, and I would show up on the sets, and I would bug these directors, and they would just look at me and say, yeah, sure, she can drive. And at that time, they were putting wigs on guys. Women just weren't doing that. And
oh my gosh!
But I was persistent, and one director just, he got sick of seeing me, and he said, all right, I'm going to give you a shot. Show up on Tuesday.
Okay.
We'll see what you can do. So
Sure.
I did, and I guess he was impressed, and he told the next guy and the next guy. And before I knew it, I was turning down work. I couldn't do it all. I was one person. I said, geez, if I could just clone myself, I could be a millionaire. And that's when I started looking around for good-looking women, because they really needed women, but women who could drive. And so I went after race car drivers and stunt women, good-looking women, and trained them in precision. And I got people like Bobby Unser Jr. and Dar Robinson, who was the greatest stuntman in the world, and I got them on the team. I formed my team, came out of the gate with these kind of people, and it just took off. Now I live in a 5,000 square foot home from living in my car. So, you can do it, if you're persistent.
That's exactly right. And that's one of the things that I find so neat about your story is because there's an awful lot of darkness, there's an awful lot of despair, abuse, situations that a person with not a great deal of strength or spirituality would not be able to live with or deal with, obviously. I was curious to ask you the question, your husband, Joe, why do you think he wanted you so badly? That's one question I always ask myself. Like when you hear about a woman who marries into the mob, let's say, for instance, I always ask myself, why are they so possessed by you? What do you think it was about you that they just thought, okay, I'm going to clutch to her for dear life. I'm not letting her go. She's got to die before she leaves me. What do you think it was that was so magnetizing about you?
I don't think it was really about me. I think it's about them. He's not the only one that does that kind of thing with women. It's their ego. I really don't know why men have to feel like they do that, but I think they have a low self-esteem, and they have to hang on to what they perceive makes them look good.
Now, do you think that you might be attracted to somebody like him now, as present Georgia? Not necessarily,
Absolutely
of course, with the
not.
abusive situation. Okay. Because I wasn't sure. I haven't looked at him, so I don't know if he's good looking. I assume your husband was good looking.
He was very good looking. He was very good looking.
Okay.
And all, you know, he was a club owner, and all the women were always after him. And
Sure.
and me being at a young age, too, it's like, wow, you know, all these girls want him, and he wants me, you know. And so my self-esteem was pretty low, too, you know.
Sure. I can completely understand. One of the characters that when I was reading about Frankie, that was the one that caught my attention because you had prefaced that as being your first love, which is Frankie, who you had met. And I wanted to talk about him a little bit because he comes into your life at one point and then he comes back, or you solicit his help later on in life, as I recall. How does Frankie differ from your husband, Joe? Because they almost sound like two fabrics of the same cloth, so to speak.
Well, Frankie, actually, there was, you know, when I was living in Manhattan, he had an after-hour club, and I was bartending there, you know, just to be around him, really. And I just set this drink down in front of this guy, and he pulls out a gun and he shoots the guy next to him. Everybody scattered, and Frankie threw me the car keys, and he says, "Georgie girl, get the car, pull it up." And I ran down 2 flights of stairs, and they got his body down there, threw him in the back seat, and I'm in the driver's seat. So I take off, and we get him to Bellevue Hospital. We just pulled up in front of the emergency. They got him out of the back seat, laid him on the ground, jumped back in the car, and we beeped the horn and took off. All they could talk about was, man, Georgie girl, can you drive a car? It wasn't about this guy, if he could live or die. You know, it was all about how I drove the car. Well, that's how I ended up driving getaway cars for the mob, because they talked about it for months. And then I went back to Rochester for a weekend, and I ran into Sammy G, who was the godfather of that area, who I grew up with. He kind of protected me as I grew up. And he said, "Georgie, you got to do me a favor." And he says, "If anybody finds out about this, they're going to find my body in the Genesee River." He says, "I can't trust anybody." I said, "Sure, Sammy, what do you want me to do?" He said, "I need you to deliver a letter for me." So when I went back to New York, there was a limousine there waiting for me, and they drove me into Brooklyn, and we parked like a block away from the restaurant where we were going into, and I couldn't understand that. And we get into the restaurant, we go into this back room, and there's 4 guys sitting there. And I'm introduced as Georgie girl. And this one guy raised his eyebrow, and like he recognized the name, which he had because they had talked about how I drove the car, you know. So anyway, I give them the letter, and they look at it and look up at me, and they said, "You tell Mr. Gingello he's going to have to meet with us in person." And I said, "Hey, I'm just the messenger. I have no idea what's in there." You know. So anyway, I'm being escorted out of the restaurant, and the guy says to me, "The old man really liked you." And I said, "Which old man?" They were all old. I was like 17 years old, right? Well, it turned out to be Carlo Gambino. And
oh my gosh.
Excuse me. And he said, they must have figured, you know, if Sammy could trust me with whatever was in that message, they knew I could drive, and I looked like the girl next door. Who was going to suspect me? So they started using me, which was very exciting to me at that age, you know. I mean, they never told me what was in these packages, but I would pick up these packages, and I would deliver them to the JFK airport and to these guys in suits, and I later found out there were millions of dollars in these packages, and I was actually delivering the money to the CIA, who was then laundering the money for the mob in foreign countries. And
oh my God!
Then, I mean, I was getting in pretty deep, and I had no awareness of, you know, how, you know, really dangerous this whole thing was, you know.
Sure.
And then they started asking me to go on pickups, and I would wait around the corner, and I assumed what they were doing was, you know, collecting the VIG and whatever they had to do if they had to beat people up to get it. But one day they came out with their guns out and just flung open the cars and the car door and said, "Step on it." And then I heard sirens in the background. I said, "Oh my God." I was a getaway driver, right? They were robbing these places, and they didn't even tell me they were doing that.
Oh,
so,
my God.
You know? So I got away, and that was probably the worst thing I could have done for myself, because then they wanted to use me all the time, and you don't say no to these guys, right?
Well, of course, I get it.
So anyway, that's how I ended up with my driving experience that helped me later in life, you know.
Well, and the thing is, as I was reading that, as most people might think about, everybody's got their opinion on that, because some people will be like, okay, well, she found out about it, and couldn't she find a way to get out of there or whatever. Was any part of that, the whole getaway car thing and the whole bit, was it thrilling or exciting to you at all? Was there anything about it where you thought, you know what, I know it's wrong, et cetera, but this is intriguing to me?
No, the whole thing was very intriguing to me. And being that I didn't really know what was going on, I was young, I felt... it was exciting, until I realized, how deep I was getting in, and then I had, to try to get out, I had to, lie about things. And at the time I was married to Joe, and he didn't even know that I was doing this. So I used him as an excuse. He thought that I was, modeling in New York,
Right.
Anyway, it was, I just said, I can't keep up the lie anymore. He's getting suspicious, and, you can't tell anybody anything, everything is, So eventually they did let me go. But years later they came back. When I'm like, now I'm in California, I've got my business, I've got my home, my friends are celebrities and, advertising people. It's a whole different world. And I get a call out of nowhere from John Gotti's
daughter.
No, his captain, and he says, I don't know how he found me. Well, I don't know how he found me, but he found me, and he doesn't even say hello. He says, I got a job for you. He said, you're going to be getting something by FedEx tomorrow. He said, the name of the hotel is there, and he said the hotel room is there. He said, and you know what name I'll be registered under. And he hung up the phone. And so the next day FedEx comes, and there's an airline ticket to Las Vegas, right? And I said, no way, no, I am not going back to that place again, right? But I had to go.
Right.
So I went, and I knocked on the hotel room door, and the guy opens the door about 4 inches, and he's standing there with a pretty much like a machine gun, right? And he says, oh, Sale's waiting for you in the other room. And he opens the door, and I go into the other room, and there's what is it, 1.8 million was spread out on 2 queen-size beds. He doesn't even say hello. He says, okay, this is what we're doing. He says, you're going to take this money to New York, and you got to go through Texas. And when you get to the border, make sure you get there at exactly 12 o'clock, because that's when they change shifts. And I said, Sal, I can't do this. And he looks at me like he's going to kill me. There's fire coming out of his eyes. And he says, what do you mean you can't do this? You owe me. And I said, Sal, I can't do this. And now at this point, I have a son, right?
Sure.
I said, and I was getting a divorce. Well, I got a divorce from my third husband. And I said, no, I'm going through a custody battle. And if anything happens, I'm going to lose my son. I cannot do this.
Sure.
I can't do this. So he says, all right. He says, just remember one thing. You owe me. And I left, and I said, oh, God, I'm out of this. And I get back on the plane, and I come home. The next night at 3 o'clock in the morning, my phone rings, and it's Sal. And he says, I got stopped at the border, Georgia. He says, how do you suppose they knew my name? And I said, what? What? I'm like in a sound sleep. He says, Sal, you think I turned you in? And he says, well, nobody knew about this except me, you, and John. He said, so how did they know my name? I said, Sal, where's the money? He says, it's back there at the border. I said, where are you? And he says, I'm about 10 miles down the road at a payphone. And I said, Sal, what's the matter with you? I said, if you go 10 more miles, there's going to be a roadblock, and you're going to be dead. You left $1 million, whatever it was, back there. I said, do you really think
Mm-hmm.
they're going to let you get away? And there's this dead silence. And he says, you know, you're not too dumb for a broad. And he hangs up the phone. And the next day, in the New York Daily News was the headline was Gotti's pal Sal picked up with 1.3 million, right? And there was,
oh my gosh,
and there was like 1.8 or something. It was short about 500,000, right?
Sure.
And of course, you know, he can't complain about it, right?
Right.
So,
oh my gosh, look at that.
But what happened was
goodness.
they had his phone tapped, and when he called me, then you know they knew what was going on, and they had a beeper in his car, so they knew where he was going. Yeah.
Really? Okay,
yeah.
I gotcha. Yeah, because I often wonder about that because obviously, of course, in today's day and age, you know, the typical, for lack of a better term, gangster or mobster, if you will, has to be 10 times smarter and faster than law enforcement because they've come out with so many different things now that they never had before. So it's kind of amazing to me, definitely. So 2 questions that I have to ask before I continue on, which is some people talk about that have been on the show that have either worked for them or been affiliated with them have said flat out that there isn't a day that goes by that they don't look beyond their shoulder or behind their back or are remotely concerned. Do you have those fears or preoccupations for yourself now at this day?
No, I don't. I'm going back to the 60s and 70s. Everybody's, you know, either dead or in jail or, you know, just, has dementia by this point.
Well, right. I was just going to say they're a little elderly, right? Now, a little older.
Yeah, but the mob is not what it used to be. Nobody sticks to the rules anymore, and it just fell apart. And really, Gotti had a lot to do with that because, you know, everything was always hush before, and he was so out there, you know.
Sure.
And he brought the attention to the mob, which really broke it up eventually.
Right. Oh, definitely. And I've heard that before, actually. And I noticed in one of your celebrity pictures that you had met Victoria Gotti. So I was curious. I haven't had the pleasure to meet her or talk to her yet. So I was curious what kind of a gal she is, just in general, because I hear things about her all the time from mutual friends, things like that. And I'm like, is she an interesting gal? Is she like her dad? Is there anything? What is this person like coming from that background? Because that's obviously, I can't even imagine what her world is like.
I really don't know her very well. I actually met her at the Kentucky Derby. We sat at the same table and we had a nice conversation. But you know, as far as she was nice, but I really don't know her personality that well. So,
gotcha. I understand completely. I do. Now, the other thing that I wanted to bring up, what I find interesting is, and this is just a curiosity question, because you are many things, and we haven't quite finished with everything yet. But do most people recognize you for being a wife of a gangster, or are they more about the sporting aspect, meaning when you were driving, they remember that? I mean, when people associate Georgia's name, what are you synonymous with most, do you find, for most people?
I think the stunts, the stunt driving.
Okay. Sure.
Yeah. But, until they read my book.
Well, I was just going to say, and then all of a sudden it all starts coming in.
Yeah, they know me who I am today, right.
Yes, that's exactly what we're going to talk about now is your stunts. Some of the things for you folks that are listening that don't know, I know that you've done stunt work on Melrose Place, Diagnosis Murder, Casper, which I thought was so cool because you doubled for Kathy Moriarty. And one of my girlfriends just cast her in a movie. I was so excited because I'm like, I bet she has got to be one class act, meaning she just looks hard as nails. She kind of scares me, to be honest with you. I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to be standing next to her, so I'm like, that must be really cool to do something like that. So I have to ask you because I know what Georgia looks like. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm trying to picture you in a race car, and I'm sorry, you're this cute little package, and I'm thinking, how is this tiny little woman fitting in this stunt car and doing all this really super dangerous stuff, and why is she doing it? I mean, what lured you to the racing aspect? I mean, did you want to learn how to professionally drive, or was it again that need for adventure? You know what I'm talking about? Because it's exciting.
Well, it has a lot to do with that adrenaline rush that, I always had working with the mob, and then, all of a sudden not doing that, and I had to have that. when I was younger, I would have joined a posse going any direction as long as it was dangerous and fighting, you know. So I continued with that. I had to have that adrenaline rush. But really how I got into the stunts was because I was in hiding from the mob, and you could never see the driver, you know. They always blacked out the windows or whatever, you know. So I was able to still work in front of the camera without being seen and still make as much money as if they saw me.
Mm.
So that's basically why.
Well, and the thing is, too, I've noticed not only did you do this stuff, and with so many different people on so many different occasions, films, etc., and you became synonymous for that. That's where Performance 2 came from. And then you had your accident. And so I'm curious as to, did that make you second guess, meaning would you still get into it? And, of course, I don't know at your age if you could go back to a stunt car. You know what I'm talking about, just to do some form of an event or whatever. But did that kind of scare you in terms of driving, and how extensive was that accident? Because I know you talk about it, but not in a whole lot of great detail.
That was a $250,000 car. And I had my office in a company that used to locate cars and detail cars for commercials. So I called the guy there from the hospital because we had to finish the commercial. And I said, "I got to get this 73 Dino Ferrari and explain the wheels and the color and everything that it had." He says, "I know somebody who's got one." And I says, "Okay, we got to get it up here by tomorrow morning. We got to finish the shot." And he calls me back and he says, "Well, I called the guy that owns that car." He said, "But it's already rented." He said, "It's up in Bodega Bay." I said, "Oh my God, it's his car I wrecked."
I shouldn't laugh, but my gosh, oh my goodness. Wow.
And that's how he found out.
Oh, my goodness gracious. Well, and then, of course, then you had to start, I'm guessing, rehab and things like that, and that must have been a very extensive hill for you to go up, you know, to get back to your normal self.
After that accident?
Yeah, after that accident in particular, yes.
Well, actually, I was okay because I had the wig on from, you know, the actress. It was a long, dark wig. So all the glass was, like, in the wig, and if I didn't have that on, it would have been in my head. And when we started out, the car didn't have any seat belts, and I made them get a lap belt, you know, at least. But back in '73, they didn't have the shoulder harnesses, so we couldn't do that. And but they did put the lap belt in, and as it turned out, if I had the shoulder harness, I would have been dead because the car flattened out like a pancake. You know. Oh my God. So there was a lot of things that happened that actually saved me, you know.
Oh, definitely. And of course too, like I said, I'm really shocked that you're not more startled. You know what I mean? Like, that's got to be kind of a scary thing, especially if how fast were you going when the accident occurred? Was it extensive?
Oh, probably 40 miles, maybe 45.
Gotcha. Okay. I got it. And then, of course, obviously that kind of...
The one that actually kind of put me out of commission was I was doing a Playboy... what was it? It was like one of their videos that they sell. And it was called Fast Women. And I was working with Bobby Unser Jr. And we had to do... It was a chase scene in downtown L.A., and then one scene we had to come at each other, and we were both doing 35 miles an hour. And then when the stunt coordinator gave us the cue, which was like last second, Bobby was to go to the left and I was to go to the right. Well, the stunt coordinator did give the cue, but somebody stepped on the radio and said, "Where's the coffee?" And we didn't get the cue when we were supposed to, and when we made the move on our own, it was too late. We had a 70-mile-an-hour head-on collision.
Oh, my God.
And I ended up with 2 operations on my neck out of that one, and the doctor said, if you continue to do this work, you're going to be in a wheelchair. So that's when I had to retire.
Yeah, and that must have been very
bittersweet. It killed me, and I missed
you.
it. You know, I missed the camaraderie. I missed seeing all these beautiful places all over the country that, you know, people save a lifetime to see, and you know, and love what you do, but Anyway, my guys still work, but and I just coordinate everything from here.
Kind of from there. I get you. And do you have permanent damage, or is your neck completely healed now? Everything's back to normal?
Well, yeah, I just have to be really careful,
Of
but
course.
Yeah.
No, I understand
but
completely. I do.
Again, this is another thing. I just really believe that God does work in strange ways, because my son got a gal that he just slept with, pregnant, and I found out that she was pregnant like 2 weeks before she delivered. So I went to the hospital to see the baby, and she was gone. The state came in and put her in a foster home. And I said, well, what's going on, Well, it turned out this woman had 2 other children taken from her due to drugs, and and the baby was born with drugs in her system, so they took her away right away. So I called the foster parent, and I says, I'm the grandmother, and I would like to come and see the baby. And she was very tart. She says, no, only the mother can come. And she said, she's sick. And I said, well, what's wrong with her? And she said, she's been projectile throwing up. Drug babies do that. It was just her attitude was so bad. So I called the next day, and I said, I wanted to find out how the baby was, and this little boy answers the phone. He had to be about 10 or 11. And I said, is your mom there? And he said, no. I said, oh, is Angela with her? And he said, no. He said, I'm watching Angela. I said, how old are you? He says, 10. I said, you're 10 years old. And the baby was only 4 days old, right?
Oh, my God.
I called, down at the foster system, and I said, look, I am the grandmother. Nobody even asked me if I would take this baby. And they said, well, do you want her? And I said, absolutely, So we had to make the change, in the office. And these people came in, and the baby was such, her hair was so greasy, like she hadn't been cleaned, and she had to actually hand the baby over to me. And I got her home, and her diaper was so, drenched. It actually dripped.
Oh, my God.
And then when I changed her, I noticed, she was all a little red and irritated down there, so that little boy must have been playing with her. And, you report that, but everything is hush-hush there. You can't talk about what's going on. So I don't know what they ever did about it. But basically, I was keeping her, and I didn't know anything about this girl, and she sounded like she really wanted the baby, and I just didn't know what the situation was, and I felt I was keeping her safe until she could prove herself to the court. And then she ended up, testing positive 7 times in 6 months, and then she ended up in jail.
God.
Of course, this is my blood. I'm not going to send her back into the system, right? So she actually, my lifestyle was so, my girlfriends would call me and they'd say, hey, let's go to Aspen this week. Okay, I'd pack my bags and we're gone, And so it was a real transition, but it turned out that this little girl just filled holes I didn't even know I had. It was the best thing that ever happened to me.
Oh, my goodness.
She's now 10 years old.
She is 10 years old. Okay, I gotcha. Got it. And now,
and she's working. She's done 5 national commercials in the last couple of years.
I saw that.
Yeah, she co-starred on Fresh Off the Boat. She's just a little
Oh my gosh, look at that. Now, what is her understanding of grandma? You know what I mean? Because obviously, I'm pretty sure that the 10-year-old is not really getting the full concept of who Georgia Durante is. So, how much of an understanding does she have of you, as far as that goes and such, and how is she adjusting? I've seen your home. It's gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous, and I suppose this is the only home she's ever known.
Yeah, she knows I'm her grandma and her mom, so it's confusing.
Sure.
And so I just had a call. I had to
No, that's okay.
turn off my phone.
Georgia's important, folks. Yes. Well, you are. I'm not going to lie about it, but go ahead. Yeah, so I imagine it's confusing because it's mom/grandma, because obviously you are grandmother, but you're also mom.
But she's known this, from the time she was very, very small. So when you grow up with that, it's just second nature again. But I built her this playhouse on the property, and It was like I was going to do like a 2-story thing, and I started looking online. They were like $25,000-$30,000. I said, oh my God, if I'm going to do that, I'm going to build it. Now I don't have an income, right? I'm not working anymore, so I took it out of my pension and I built her this playhouse that's a mini version of the main house.
Right.
And it looks like it turned out to be close to $60,000 for this thing.
Oh
and
my
gosh!
gosh!
With this, I know, thinking that this is normal, But really,
Holy
that little guest house, that little playhouse, turns out, I started doing children's parties to pay for it, and somebody said, "Would you do a wedding here?" And I said, "Gee, why not?" And it turned into a business, and the guest in that little playhouse was the catalyst for that. And it's a thing that, and I also do vacation rentals here. I rent out the guest house, which it's huge for vacation people, and they come with families, and the little playhouse is what draws them here. So, come on, tell me God doesn't have his fingers in that.
No kidding. Wow. My goodness. And I wanted to ask, of course, obviously, I know that you have mentioned that one of your children, of course, had struggled with drug addiction. And so that's becoming more and more prevalent, unfortunately, in today's societies. We're finding more and more and more. And you sacrificed, actually, and worked very hard to try to help your child. So I'm hoping that when I ask this question, we're going to hear that all is good and recovery is done and things are better.
All is great. I did the tough love thing with her, and she finally decided on her own that she didn't want to do this anymore. And I said, okay. I said, if you are not going to do drugs, you can stay here. So, like, she was here a week, and I said, you can't have any of your friends over. You can't, So, but then I had to go to Chicago. I had to do the mob convention.
Oh, my gosh.
Yeah. So, and it had only been a week, and I didn't want to leave her alone in the house for a week.
Sure.
So I called a friend of mine. I said, Ron, I got to go out of town. I said, and I don't want to leave Tony here by herself. I said, can you, let her stay with you until I get back? And he said, sure. So I come back, and she never did. They fell in love. He helped her get into a rehab, and now they have 2 beautiful children.
Oh,
Guy
that's
and Jimmy.
wonderful.
And they're all the same age as Angela. So Angela has her little playmates, and it's great. It's really great.
Oh my God, and that's a wonderful story to hear. Because now in today's day and age, I interviewed a guy similar, had been in the lifestyle himself, and he just would every day. He's like, we get up in the morning, try to figure out who's dead from drug abuse, etc. It really is becoming literally the next natural killer when you think about it. I mean, people are gravitating to it. It's very, very dangerous. The new drugs, the new things that are out there, it scares me. Definitely. Now, I know that you have done appearances at both the Gangster Convention and MobCon 2014, so I see we have mutual friends. I interviewed Paul Sharp. Oh, and I have to ask you because I still haven't met him yet, and I know that you were both there at the same time, so I'm just curious to pick your brain. What a lovely fellow is he. We've talked about Murder and McHenry before, and I thought to myself, how neat is that? What was the turnout like? How did the convention go there? Because I was curious. I didn't make it, but I thought I'd love to know how things went and how people respond.
People came. I had some people who had read my book. Some gal from North Carolina who came all the way from North Carolina just to meet me.
Oh my gosh!
I thought that was so bizarre. Really, you came all that way? And she's turned out to be my biggest fan.
Oh, that's so sweet.
But all the guys from The Sopranos were there, and Giancana was there. She was selling her sauce, and
Sure.
And Al Capone's grandson was selling bricks from his building.
Oh my gosh! Look at that. That's really kind of neat, though.
Yeah, it was really fun. It was fun.
And it kind of and of course, obviously, people have a preoccupation with the mob to begin with. So anything that's going to be mob relative, especially if you live
there was a lot of mob memorabilia and a lot of stuff like that.
Neat, definitely neat. So, of course, I have to ask you because some of the people that I interview that I've been friends with, et cetera, I've actually met, obviously, on TV. Mob Wives is the big one. So I have to ask you about that because some of my friends are on the show, and I was a friend of Big Angie's, and I miss her terribly. She was a wonderful woman. I'm curious, what do you think what is your take on that? Well, I guess I'm curious because you were a mob wife. So I'm kind of like, what are your impressions of that show? Because I've asked somebody else that question. It was very adverse reaction, like,
what,
that's
the
a bunch
Sopranos?
of crap and da-da-da-da. No, the Mob Wives. Have you ever watched the Mob Wives series?
Oh, God.
Like Mob Wives Chicago, Mob Wives New York. I just wanted to ask. I'm curious because this is like a real mob wife on the phone right now with me. So I'm like, let's talk a bit. What does she think of the show? Because I'm guessing what your reaction is.
It just turns my stomach, It's just,
really?
That's when people think of mob wives, that's what they think of, and I'm kind of not in that category at all.
Well, I gathered that, yes, from reading it and all that good stuff. Obviously, it's the power of television. I mean, television glamorizes, and I've said it 100 times over. It just looks so pretty on film or on TV or whatever the case may be, and it's very, very different when you're reading George's book, for instance, and then you're seeing and reading all of this and thinking, this is not pretty. It sounds exciting and wonderful, but a lot of it sounds very. Well, it would make me cry, to be honest with you, actually, because it's very scary in a lot of ways. To your testament, in 2009, you got the American Authors Association Golden Quill Award, as well as the Lifetime Achievement Award. Kudos to you on that one. That was very impressive. Like, her whole life isn't impressive. Two other big things that you do. I know
I was going to say.
Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
I got the Lifetime Achievement Award from the Chicago Police.
Oh, my God, seriously?
Yes.
That is a little ironic, isn't it?
When I
I'm
had
not
to
going
get
to
up
ask
and give
why.
a speech, when I got up to give a speech, I just looked at everybody and said, I take the fifth.
That is too funny. I didn't realize it was from there. I didn't know. I mean, it's prefaced, but it doesn't say. So I'm like, oh, my God, how funny is that? Now, that's a very ironic twist, isn't it? I think about that stuff, too. Very unusual. Now, there's two other things that you do. Enchanted Manor events, obviously, the Enchanted Manor, you rent out for vacations and filming and events and things like that. Does that ever become arduous? Because obviously that's part of your home and you're allowing people in on a regular basis and it's beautiful. Oh, my God, I would live there if I could. But do you ever get to that point where you're like, you know what? Maybe it's time for me to just do something else, and it can be intrusive, and I would think with all the attention you garnish that you kind of get over it after a while. Does that make sense?
Well, you know what? I love people, and I get a lot of families here, a lot of people from Europe, and they come with little kids, and it's great because my daughter has built-in playmates. And, they go swimming, and a lot of times they don't even speak the language, but they just figure out how to communicate. And then I'll sit out there, and we'll roast marshmallows and, have a glass of wine with the parents and, learning about, their world. And Angela's being exposed to, and we've had people here from Saudi Arabia and, just all over the world. And it's very interesting. Very interesting.
Sure,
so they become my entertainment. I can be a stay-at-home mom and still make an income, and it's great.
And that's awesome, too, because then, like you're saying, not only do you get to meet the different people, but the house is absolutely beautiful. And I would suppose I saw the charity event with is it the bishop that was there? Or I just saw a picture that you had some kind of it was a clergy person, I can tell you that, but I thought that was really neat. I thought, oh, my gosh, how neat is that? And all the good stuff. Do you get an opportunity to host some of your old friends there? And when I mean old pals, I mean pals of the lifestyle, et cetera. Do they ever come and visit and you get to kind of relive old times?
Oh, yeah. In fact, until Angela came along, because money is much better spent on her now, but I used to have a huge Christmas party, like 300 people. I had a band, and and I would have priests and nuns, mob guys, and FBI, and the array of people was just amazing that would be here. But they all were friendly. Henry Hill was always here.
Oh, neat. That is super neat, actually. That's well, to those of us that are intrigued with that, it's kind of like it's neat. You know what I'm talking about? That's an interesting way, and plus the stories, I can imagine. I would love to be on the fly on the wall because I'm always I'm huge on the nostalgia with the olden days and things like that. It's always very intriguing. Which surprised me when you have this whole section on your website, and to you folks that don't know, obviously your work with the military was very impressive to me. I know you were presented with a commander's coin, which I thought was so impressive. And I know there's much to be obtained by working with the military, and I would suppose that is that something that you're still doing now, or was that something you did in the past, or you still continue to work with them?
Well, how that happened, I was doing a radio show like I am doing with you, and
right.
the commander of the Air Force Base in New Mexico heard the show, and I was talking about abuse, and he called the radio host to get my number, and at that time the guys were coming out of Iraq, and they were killing their wives, and it was like happening weekly. So he called me and asked me if I would come and give a speech to all the officers about what to look for, how it happens, all that stuff. So I did, and there was about 50 officers in the room, and then I got a standing ovation. And he ended up. There's a program called the Joint Civilian Orientation Conference, JCOC, and what they do, you have to be nominated by someone of that caliber, and they have like 4,500 nominees, and they have 2,500 nominees, and they pick 45 people from that group. And they check you back to your grandmother's underwear, believe me. And I had no idea how I got on that list. But I was chosen. And, and these are CEOs of companies and, people of, good standing. And so we didn't know where we were going. And we flew into Washington, and our first stop was at the Pentagon, where we were briefed as to what we were going to be doing, and because of the terrorist, we couldn't know where we were going. Well, then we get on a plane at the Air Force Base there, and it's a C-31, that big one with the one that they put all the equipment on to bring into the war zone. And I got to sit in the cockpit for takeoff and landing. It was amazing, and we did a air-to-air fuel transfer over Iceland.
Okay, sure.
And so now we get to our first stop was Germany, and the purpose of this whole thing was to show us the military might, in hopes that we would come out and write about it and speak about it in a positive way. Well, they put on a show for us. Then we went to Italy, and we went on a ship, and they showed us everything there, and it was just the most amazing. If I have to look back on my life, I would say that was my biggest highlight. And I did. I came back, and I wrote about it, and Penguin Publishing called me and asked me if I would give them my paperback rights. So I did, and they allowed me to add a chapter, which I talked about that. So I did my part there.
That's just so lovely. That is. And not everybody gets an opportunity. Yeah, and imagine just looking at all those people and seeing what they've done to preserve our freedom in our country is just amazing. I mean, even just the opportunity to work with them is terrific, I've been very blessed. Some of the people from overseas, actually, that were serving had contacted me and said, hey, we listened to your radio show. And I thought, in my own little way, I'm doing a little something. So that made me feel really good about myself. So I'm like, great. Yeah. Now, I have to ask you this question since we're almost finished here. I came across this Voices of Violence paintings of you. Oh, my God, they're beautiful. And I wanted to talk about that because I bet a lot of people don't know about that part of you, but they're gorgeous. They're absolutely beautiful. So tell the folks about how that all came about. And can we see them, or can you get them? Or I didn't look to see specifically.
You know what? I think you can go on Michael Bell's. He was the painter. He was the artist.
Okay.
I think he has them on his website. We did like 12 of them, and we donated them for charity for abused women. And he is amazing. He contacted me and asked me if he could do my portrait, and I said, sure.
Oh, my gosh.
And then I got to talk to him about what I do, and we kind of worked together in different charity events. So that's how that all came about.
That is so amazingly cool, too. And the pictures were absolutely lovely. I mean, I'm not going to lie to you. They're absolutely, absolutely gorgeous. I mean, absolutely, without a doubt, gorgeous. And very different sides of you, which I found very interesting, and to me, to say the least, as far as that goes. So my last question before we go through telling everybody some of the business stuff as to how to find you, et cetera, I gathered that there's a parallel. You had I want to say this the right way. I've noticed in your real life and your stunt world is kind of like parallel from the standpoint of you started off doing like the getaway car thing and all this good jazz. So you're kind of racing to from one place to the next to kind of get to a greater good. Just like with the stunt thing. It almost seems like everything you've done in your life has led you to kind of a greater purpose. Does that make sense? Like it was always driving you to get to that point. Do you feel that you've gotten to that point, so to speak, or do you feel that you have more work, or do you see a different, even another new direction for Georgia somewhere down the line?
No, I definitely feel, I know why I was put here on Earth, and it's basically to help other people, and I didn't know that. I didn't know that that was my mission, but I know it now, and and I continue to do that. You know, I'm always here for people that need help. In fact, I'm working with a priest right now, who
oh my gosh,
he is a coupon king, unbelievable. He buys $1,000 worth of groceries and stuff, you know, and he pays $9. So twice a week he drops the stuff off, and my garage is filled, and then I give it to the poor. I mean, I'll put stuff in my car, and I'll just hand it to people that I think need it as I go along. But no, that's who I am today.
Oh my
I think that's who I was all along, but you know, it just came out now.
Right. Well, and the thing is, too, that's just it. You learn things, I think, as you age every year. Every 10 years, you're learning something about yourself, your life, and you know, things in general every 10 years or 5 years or whatever have you. Okay, I'm going to do two things now, which is, before I forget, I have to ask you, we also have a mutual friend in Sean Young. I got to meet Sean Young like a year ago. Was that exciting?
Really?
Oh, my gosh, I don't know. I have idolized that woman for life. And then I reviewed her movie, The Networker, her independent film she did, and I was like in awe. You know how you meet one of your idols and you're like, I can't talk, and I felt like I'm like I can't talk. You know what I mean? Because it's Sean. Yeah. I'm like, oh my God, this is Sean Young. Oh my God, I can't even say enough. I don't even know where to go with that whole thing.
So
and I saw that. I saw an old picture of you guys from like the 1990s, and I thought, I wonder how she knows Sean Young, because you're not really in the film thing, you know, because of course she's a Hollywood actress. I was curious your connection with her, how you knew her.
Well, I do a radio show. I used to before I got Angela.
Right.
Every Saturday called Outlaw Radio, and she had come in at some point and was interviewed, and then she became a regular on the show as I was, and we just became friends.
Oh my gosh, look at that. How cool is that? I think that's so neat because she's an amazing woman. She's very different than what I would have expected. Like when I actually sat down and talked to her and then I talked to her on the phone, very, very different. I can't even go there. Okay. And now, yes,
she's very supportive. She's very supportive of me because I do a lot for charity events. And I have a book that has been signed by 28 celebrities, and pretty much all of them are dead now. And
oh my gosh.
that goes at auction for about $3,500, and she bought that book. And basically,
really?
She did, and she's very generous.
Yeah, she's just a doll. I mean, like I said, I would do anything for her. I think she's absolutely lovely. I mean, I've always been enamored with her, and I'm just so blessed to even know her. I think it's awesome. So the only other question I can ask you is this. You did two remarkable things, which I thought, you know, like you can't be perfect enough. And I'm like, okay, she did these two things, which I found impressive. For one, obviously, you go around and you visit prisons, etc., and you are very big on being empowering to women who have suffered the same type of abuse as yourself. You also did a letter of forgiveness to your ex-husband, which I know is a tremendously difficult endeavor to those of us that have been abused at the hands of another. So tell me what both of those experiences, have they altered you or changed you? What do you gain from that? I mean, obviously, you know, forgiveness is more so for yourself. I understand that. But what continues to make you want to go out and talk about and inspire other women? Because it's difficult, I imagine, to talk about such a tumultuous part of your life over and over and over again.
Well, it isn't. It isn't because it's very freeing, you know.
Okay.
And to know that other people are in that situation that I was in and found it so difficult to get out, and it gives them, you know, it just gives them the courage to do what they need to do. But I'm not a psychiatrist, so you know, it's like I don't tell them what to do. It's like everybody has to take their own steps to do it. But I tell them my story, and how I did it, and they got a pull from that,
Oh,
when the first time I went into the Twin Towers here in Los Angeles, I got there an hour early, but it took so long to get processed in that I was about 20 minutes late. And these gals had no idea why I was there. They just wanted to get out of their cells for an hour. So they're all waiting for me, sitting on these chairs. They got their feet up on the chairs. They're chewing gum. They're spitting at each other. And, oh, my God, it was like, I said, man, this is going to be a tough crowd, right? So the first thing I said to him, I says, I gotta tell you, gals, I said, it's harder to get in this place than it is to get out. And that broke them up, and it broke the ice. And the first thing I asked was, how many women in here have been physically abused or sexually abused? And every single one of them raised their hands. I couldn't believe it.
Oh, my God.
And then it just dawned on me. I said, that's why they're here, because I remember when I was raped, and you lose your self-esteem. You don't think you're worth anything. And when you don't think you're worth anything, you end up in jail with the same kind of people. So until you get confidence in who you are, you're never going to go forward.
Exactly. No, I agree with you.
When I left there, when I walked in, they were spitting on each other. When I left, they were crying and hugging each other.
Oh,
and
my
it was
God.
just. I had goosebumps when I walked out of there, and I just felt I really connected with them, and it just felt so good to do that,
Oh, my gosh, look at that. What a life. Oh, my goodness. Well, you weren't nearly as scary as I would have thought. I was very intimidated when I first had you calling in. I'm like, oh, my God, it's her. And it just, oh, my goodness gracious. Look at this. Okay, I'm going to rattle off a bunch of things, and when I get done, let me know if I forgot anything. And this is for the listening audience, to anybody who's just listened to this wonderful woman. I'm going to name off every place that you can find her. Her main website is georgiadurante.com. The book is called The Company She Keeps, and the website being thecompanySheKeeps.com. The stunt proponent is performance2.com, which is the website. Anybody interested in events, weddings, etc., it's enchantedmanorevents.com. Georgia has a Facebook page, and of course it's Georgia, and Durante is spelled Durante. She is on Twitter with the handle Wheelwoman, which I think is so kick butt. I can't even stand it. Of course, because she's an actress. IMDb profile. She can also be found on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Happy Memory Books. Have I missed anything?
Oh, my goodness. You really did your homework, didn't you?
Well, yes, I am a journalist,
The main one is if anybody wants to buy the book, I sign it to everybody personally when they get it from the website.
Nice.
And they get it cheaper there, too, than they do on Amazon.
Oh, I'm sure. Oh, I don't want to forget about that. Are you going to continue to do public appearances? I forgot to ask about that, because sometimes people will still do them, so I'm not sure how active you are. Are you planning to go out and do more appearances and such if people want to meet you?
Oh, yeah, and you know what else I do is book clubs, and I will call people. We'll do a Skype thing after they read the book, and they have lots of questions for me, so I do that as well.
That's really awesome.
It's really easier for me now because it's hard to travel with Angela. So I do a lot of things by Skype and to fly. In fact, they asked me to speak at the Rotary Club in Chicago a couple of months ago.
Oh, nice.
And I just leave her. I hate doing that.
It's a lot.
If it's local, I definitely will do things local.
That's absolutely awesome. Yeah, because I figured that people listening in, of course, they would want an opportunity to meet you, because who wouldn't want to meet you? I'm like, this is just, it's like a step back in time, and just to see the progression of how things are is amazing. So the last thing I want to do before I let you off the hook is I always take the last 2-3 minutes of my show to tell the person on the phone what I think of them, because I have a generalized impression formulated of you. And I did the same thing with Deanna, and she was just so gracious and lovely, and she said the nicest things, and I thought, oh, my goodness gracious. One of the reasons that I have been patiently waiting for this woman, folks, and it's taken a long time for us to instrumentalize this interview, because you've been busy and things have kept coming up and our schedules didn't work. And finally they did, and I was just ultra excited the other day when you called me and you said, oh my God, I'm coming on the show. And why? There's 3 things when I think about the name Georgia Durante. First of all, it's not Mob Wife, and it's not this, and this, all those fancy titles that she has in the world. Strength, survivor, sensational are the three things that I think of. You survived more than most people, and you didn't crack or end up in an asylum or killing yourself or otherwise, which I think is so impressive. It's a testament to you that you're able to endure past the worst experiences and make yourself a far better person because of it, which I think is amazing. Some people might look at you and think, oh my gosh, this Georgia girl is a criminal. You did what you had to do to survive in an environment that, again, could have cost you your life on a multitude of times. God has blessed us more than I can tell you with your existence, because women are becoming better and empowered and engaging because of you. There are people that read your book that tend to, and I've been told this by a couple of people, stay away from that lifestyle and not find it so appealing, which is amazing because the abuse numbers are up. People think that things like this are accepted and it's wonderful, and it's not wonderful. It's deadly. Consequences can be death, as you know, more so than anybody. You're very intelligent. You're extremely engaging. You're adorable. You just want to come up and like hug you, because I'm like, if you ever look at Georgia's picture, you're a beautiful woman. Even today, even though I know you've aged a little bit, you're absolutely beautiful. You really are. And that same Kodak girl, the Kodak girl is still there. I don't know if you know that or not, but take a really good look inside that mirror. If you look at her face, you'll see that she still exists. And the neatest part about my entire, this is the one thing that I was looking forward to, because I have a list about 87 miles long of what I have to do today. But the one main thing that I wanted was, I got up early and I prepped, because I thought, I'm a much better person, even if I never speak to you or I never meet you in person. This entire experience has just taught me something about myself and what you can be if you put your mind to it, if you put your heart and your soul into something. You really are a success story on far many levels than I think you know. And I'm just blessed that you wanted to talk to me for an hour. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. No, thank you.
You're quite welcome. No, it really was wonderful, and I truly mean that. And the last thing I'm going to say to you is I would be more than happy. I did a review of Deanna's book, actually, and that one was harder, and I would love to do a formal review of your book. I checked. I tried to see when the last time you had a review was, and it looks like it's been a little bit since somebody sent a review of your book before, although you would know that better than me.
Yeah,
I would love
on
to
Amazon.
do that.
That'd be great.
Right, because when I did Deanna's, it just broke my heart. And, you know, I'm a huge Dean Martin fan, so I wanted her on my show because I love Dean Martin. And I thought, oh, my God, I'm like many people. This is the only way I'm going to get to Dean Martin. So I thought, okay, and I had heard great things about her. And then I read the book, and I'm like, my heart kind of broke. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's like when you idolize him so much and then you read some of the realities, you kind of trick yourself into thinking, oh, that's not really, you know, that wouldn't have been how he was. And then it's like, no, really, that's kind of how it was. So it was kind of disheartening when I read it, but I still adore him. I listen every time I write a script or something, I will be listening to Dean Martin. I've done lots of things to Dean Martin, but it just, I think that I want to review your book because I don't know the whole story. I know as much as I can know by prepping, but I don't know everything, and I want to know. I want to know everything, and I think that most people that read your book will want to know everything, and they'll want to know, you know, you. The best way to know that, I think, is to either read your book or watch some of your past history and look at your pictures, and I think it's awesome. And I swear, if you plan something in California, I will get on a plane, I will run there, and I will get there, because I travel for work on and off. So I would love to come and see you. That would be lovely. Oh my God, yes. I go to New York all the time. So if I can go to New York, I can go to California. Trust me.
Well,
I can go
there. Where are you now?
I live in Wisconsin because I have kids. So when my kids are grown in about 8 years, I'm going to relocate to New York for good, I think. Because I do a lot of things in the film industry and other things. I'm a writer by trade. So a lot of what I do is more so there, and I'm just getting more and more popular there. It just makes sense. My whole life here is kind of similar to yours. I've had a crappy life in Wisconsin. I love my friends to death, but it's time for a change. So I have to grow my kids, and when my kids are 18, I want to live there, you know, and well, actually, I want to live in Little Italy. Yes, I know. That's probably not right.
Yeah.
I'm kind of a Georgia junior. I like, yeah, I like the boy. I like the Italian, exciting, you know, I like that. I get jonesed by that excitement and the naughtier boys in the world. See, this is probably why I'm single, because I enjoy that lifestyle too much, and I know. But no, I do travel all the time. So if I get enough warning, I can go. I've been asked to go to California repeatedly, so I need a reason to go. I'm trying to set up a book signing for one of my books, so maybe that will bring me there. I have a publicist I work with there. So yeah, I can get there. If I can go to New York,
if you happen to get here for whatever other reason, always give me a call.
I would absolutely love that. I would be thrilled, actually. Okay. Oh, my God. Now I'm so excited. Okay. So now I'm going to let you get off of air because when I get off of air, if you don't mind, I'd like to call you because there's a question I have for you that I want to ask you off air. Not on air.
Okay.
But I would love that.
Okay.
That sounds terrific. All right, Georgia, we'll let you go. I'll wrap up with my crowd, and I'll get back with you soon. And thank you so much again. I appreciate it.
Oh, thank you, hon.
All right. I'll talk to you soon.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Folks, tell me that she isn't amazing. Georgia Durante. Oh, my God, oh, my God, oh, my God. Wasn't that, like, totally exciting, right? Okay, so just to go through one more time for her 57,000 websites, GeorgiaDurante.com, thecompanySheKeeps.com, Performance2.com, EnchantedManorEvents.com. She has a Facebook page, which is Georgia, and again, it's Durante. Her Twitter handle is @WheelWoman. She is on IMDb, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, and Happy Memory Books. So you can find her book, Company She Keeps, is out there, and of course Performance 2 being her stunt drivers, and of course anybody interested, California area for an event, EnchantedManorEvents.com. One more time, thanks so much to Georgia. Thank you so much to Tori Weinstein for organizing and orchestrating this interview. You are my godsend lately, my dear new intern, and I appreciate you so much. Want to remind everybody to tune in tomorrow at 10 o'clock a.m. Central Standard Time, where I will be hosting Kelly Fitzpatrick, which is the CEO and founder of the Fitzpatrick Irish Dance Academy in New York City. They recently performed for one of the Mets games, and I'm so excited to talk to her because I, of course, have always wanted to learn how to Irish dance. So here we go in 10 easy steps. So thanks again to everybody that listened in today, and I will be in contact with you tomorrow. Tune in for tomorrow's show at 10 a.m. Thanks. Bye-bye.
What you doing?
Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. Bye, singing dog. Bye, goal.
I pronounce you.
Bye, wedding ceremony.
Stop! At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really?
Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.
What you doing?
Ran out of space on my phone, so I'm deleting some stuff. Bye, singing dog. Bye, goal.
I pronounce you.
Bye, wedding ceremony.
Stop! At Metro PCS, you get 2 free phones with twice as much memory.
Really?
Don't say bye to your memories. Switch to Metro PCS and get 2 free LG K20 Plus phones with 32 gigs when you switch 2 lines. Metro PCS. Wireless. Figured out. Coverage not available in some areas. Sales tax not included in phone price. Excludes numbers on the T-Mobile network. See store for details and terms and conditions.